Hi, friends.
Howdy, y'all.
Hello, puppets. I'm Sara Ezzat. I'm the creator of the Costume Codex channel on YouTube.
My name is Josh Gosdin, and I am a big old nerd.
And that is enough.
But it
today,
better be, because that's all we got today.
Yeah, we're not enough today because we're missing our beloved Jack. And I'm sure that's obvious to all of you out there. So our beloved Jack has some chronic health problems, and everybody who has chronic issues probably knows that sometimes things get bad, and he's in a bad patch right now. So he's not able to record with us.
So we're sending him our well wishes as we kind of soldier on with something here for a little bit.
Yeah, but we didn't want to go on to the next episode without him. So we thought we would... I have an outtake from the Back to the Future episode. I have this outtake because that episode was going a bit long, and it was a great discussion that we had about how we talk about people we find sexy, especially on media. But the episode was going long as it was, and I didn't know how to cut that because it was such an interesting discussion. So I sort of thought I will save it for when we need something. And turns out that was good because we needed something. So there will be, I will put that in here as well. And there will be, so you will have some Jack. So it's not a totally Jackless episode.
Will be a little Jack.
A little Jack, yeah. And I have found the video for that too, so I might be able... That was the episode where I lost the video and the sound. Podcasting is a learning experience.
It's all serendipity. Everything happens as it should.
Yes, or it happens and then we find a way to make it work.
We make meaning out of it.
Funny that. So for today, I asked for some questions from our friends in Discord. So we've got a few things to discuss there.
Oh boy.
So shall we go into that, or do you have anything else, Josh?
I'm Josh. I skimmed the questions. I didn't really take a good hard look at them because sometimes, inferred spoilers or contextual spoilers can help me prematurely connect some plot dots in my head. So I wanted to avoid them. So this is very raw for me. This is very off the cuff for me. So you're gonna ask me some questions. I hope you said you'll give your input as well, and I'm gonna do my best to answer them, coherently, cogently, and intelligently. But ultimately, one of the things that Jack has said, and I agree with it, we get out of this podcast, is just an opportunity to spend some time with some friends. So you and me just hanging out, Sara, and just having a conversation, hopefully will be something that others find endearing and entertaining.
Yeah, it's not like we didn't, we weren't in 2 Zoom calls with each other yesterday.
Honestly.
First one is from Boris.
Okay. What's his Discord handle? Is it Defrosted Robot?
Yes, it is Defrosted Robot.
Okay.
Which handful of Trek characters would you like to see be part of the Moya crew?
If I could make my own Moya crew out of... Oh, no. Oh, geez. That is a very good question, Boris. So I feel like part of the point so far, and I'm 5 episodes in, part of the point of Farscape is people who are lost, both literally and figuratively, trying to find themselves. And so with, kind of with that, I guess, filter, because otherwise I would just pick all
of them.
All of them, yeah. I'd put all the captains on Moya, first of all. Like Kirk, Picard, Cisco, Janeway. I'd get Archer, I'd get them all together and just kind of like shake them up in like a Yahtzee cup and see what comes out. See how quickly Janeway would kill all of them, that kind of stuff. But I feel like on the Trek Moya, some of the most interesting and lost characters in Trek include B'Elanna from Voyager. Giving B'Elanna an opportunity to work with a living ship, like that would be amazing.
Yes.
I love her. I really like the angle from Enterprise of Malcolm Reed, not really knowing who he is if he's not a serviceman.
Mm-hmm.
And so removing him from that structured environment and putting him on Moya, I think would be really interesting. And how quickly B'Elanna would kill him. Data on Moya. Come on.
Data and Pilot. That would be
Data as Pilot.
They would have some interesting discussions.
Absolutely, we would, yeah. And then I don't know, just like those are the first three that came to my head when I was thinking about that question. And if more pop up as we go along, I'll throw in my 2 cents. But what do you think, Sara? You're a pretty deep in Trek aficionado as well.
Well, DS9 is my favorite Trek. Well, Lower Decks is coming up there. But I think I would think of characters that got a bit overshadowed and didn't get enough. So my brain goes to Ezri.
Yeah.
Maybe especially because I saw Jessie Gender had a beautiful tribute to her, a beautiful video tribute to her recently. But yeah, that's one character I always wish got more, space to breathe.
Space.
And I also think Garrick. Because Farscape is a more morally complex world, and that is a space for Garrick.
Yes.
Also, we could just let him be bi, because he so is.
Let the man be bi.
Yeah. Just
for God's sake. I mean, he played. The actor has said that he played Garrick as being in love with Bashir, like from the first time. Of course he was. Yeah.
I maintain they had a relationship, we just didn't see it. So yeah, I think those two, who maybe a third, Tendi? Tendi could be fun.
Yeah. Oh, she would love it. She would be just so excited about everything all the time.
maybe she's too like Ezri, but I don't know. She's someone else that I want to see more of, although we will see more of her. I don't know. I'm blanking on her name, but the beautiful android woman in Discovery, or not android. She was augmented. Oh,
Ariam.
Ariam, yes. Mm-hmm. Another character
Also,
I'd like. Yeah. I think it'd be interesting to see her interact with Zahn.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are my people that I think Moya would have given more space to than they had on Star Trek.
More space.
Well, Moya is a big girl.
She really is.
And beautiful.
Big time.
Okay, so Boris's second question.
Okay.
Now that you've seen the first few episodes of the show, and are getting on board, what would you say to someone who has doubts about the show?
So we talked about it a little bit in our discussion about IET. No, it was in Back to the Future, where I had I don't know how many backs in that title, where I had I guess, kind of a moment with myself as I was watching the episode of like, just let go and have a good time. Because I spent some time in the first half of that episode just going, what's going on and why is it happening? And it was the why is it happening that I was really getting hung up on. And I realized that I was kind of getting in my way of my own way of enjoying the episode. And so it was in the same scene where Crichton first goes and talks to Zahn about, hey, I'm moving back and forth through time. And Zahn's like, oh, weird. And they're having that conversation where I was just like, you know what, just let it go and enjoy the ride. And once I did that, I really enjoyed back and back into the future. And I enjoyed IET, and I think if I had done that earlier, I might have even enjoyed the premiere a little bit more than I did. Like, I liked the premiere, but I don't know if you recall our discussion. I had a few bones to pick with it.
Yeah, you got hung up on how on earth the spaceship would survive.
Yeah, I did. I really did.
Plot magic.
So, having anybody who's interested in getting into Farscape for the first time, the need to let go and enjoy is something that I think will be helpful for somebody who's brand new to it. Because, like I said, once I did, I've been having a blast with it.
Okay. And that's how you'd sell it to someone who's like, should I watch this?
I would. It's not unlike a theme park ride or a roller coaster. I'm not driving the car, but I'm still having a fun time.
I like it. Okay. A question from Paul. Paul from the Passion of the Nerd Hangout. Are there examples of tropes getting subverted that you've enjoyed? Or are there any tropes that you're hoping to see subverted?
Hoping to see subverted. I feel like that's setting myself up to be double subverted, which is the trope is just played straight. Like I don't know what I'm hoping to see subverted, but when we watched Throne for a Loss, I remember being really appreciative of the plot choice and the writing choice to send the young Tavlek back down to his planet and have him put the gauntlet on again. Mm-hmm. Because like we talked about in our discussion about that, there was a very, like, obviously for us, the metaphor was drugs. And there was, Zahn's storyline with the young Tavlek was kind of moving in a just say no direction. Drugs bad. And the ending where the Tavlek holds up the gauntlet and he's like, it's my choice. To me is a much more, I guess, human, relatable storytelling choice because drugs are complicated.
Yep.
And just say no. If we could just say no, we wouldn't have the problem. Yeah. So that was a subversion of the, I guess, PSA, very special episode trope that the episode could have been, that I really enjoyed, that I really loved. And Virginia Hayes' acting in that scene was phenomenal.
It's funny you mention that because I actually had an exchange on Twitter with the writer, Richard Manning. He was talking about it was at the end of this thread when he was talking about a Farscape episode or a Star Trek episode he wrote. Oh, I'm terrible at the titles of Star Trek episodes. The one where early season 1 or 2 when at some point they have to explain drugs to Wesley, who's just like, why are people doing drugs?
That was Symbiosis in season 1 of TNG.
Right. Yes, I told you I'm terrible at remembering the titles.
I'm a big, this is my nerd cred right here.
I'm a nerd too. I just also have ADHD. So he was talking about, sort of having to write the very, drugs are bad in cliche in that, and how much pleasure he took in writing Thrown for a Loss and being able to have that scene of nope, undoes your expectations, and yeah, he goes back to the drugs, and how hard he never thought he'd get away with that, but they did.
That's interesting because in that episode, it's Tasha Yar talking to young Wesley Crusher, and Wesley is like, "Why would anybody do drugs? Drugs are stupid." And Tasha who's been through some shit, is like, "Yeah, but like, if you live in what you think is hell and drugs feel good, why wouldn't you?"
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that he felt like he got to be more nuanced with Thrown for a Loss, because I actually thought that Tasha did a pretty good job of bringing some nuance to that episode.
Yeah, but you know what networks are like. It's probably really hard to get that.
Sure,
to even
absolutely.
get that much nuance. Anyway, I replied that, you know, we had just recorded that discussion and how much we loved that, and yeah, he responded with, "I never thought I'd get away with Zahn flashing the kid." So I never thought I'd get away with Zahn flashing the kid, but, and I replied, "But indeed."
Yeah, but indeed.
And he gave me a bit of a naughty. So yeah, that was kind of fun.
This is so
yes.
cool. Got to rub elbows with the celebrity there.
That's Twitter. Sometimes Twitter is good. Often Twitter is bad, so very bad, but sometimes Twitter is fun.
Sometimes Twitter is good. Okay.
Sometimes you get to exchange naughty jokes with people who wrote you. Okay, let me find the rest of the questions here. So Megla from Discord says, what ways has sci-fi culture either been beneficial or harmful in your lives? Did it cause ostracism and trauma, or did it help you find your people, self, and forge your identity?
Well, Meg, thanks for bringing the therapy couch. Appreciate that. So that takes me all the way back to my childhood, and to my dad's childhood, actually. My dad was the driving force that moved me into sci-fi fandom, nerddom. When he was a kid in the 70s, he would race home after school let out so that he could catch reruns of Star Trek, the original series, at his friend's house. And they would all gather around the TV and they would watch Captain Kirk save the galaxy. And he had so much fun with it. And then when I was a little kid, my dad used the morality plays of Star Trek as an opportunity to try to impart some values onto me. Things like telling the truth, things like standing up for your friends, things like doing the right thing even when it's not the popular thing. And I really took a lot of that and kind of internalized it, integrated it, and ran with it in my life. So for me, Star Trek in particular has a very like nostalgic kind of warm quilt sensation for me. We would have what we called Space Spectacular Sundays, where we would wake up on Sunday mornings. I would wake him up, and he would cook a big Southern breakfast, pancakes and eggs and bacon and grits. And we'd sit down in front of the TV and we'd watch a Star Trek adventure or a Star Wars adventure or a space adventure of some kind. So a lot of formative years kind of stuff, a lot of bonding stuff. So there's a foundation there. There is some identity forging there. I, in my current life, definitely find a lot of solace and a lot of hope and a lot of optimism in Star Trek in particular, and in a lot of sci-fi in general, looking at where we could be as a society and as a culture, looking at how we can do better in treating each other and treating ourselves. I've really been enjoying a lot of the kind of nuanced ways that modern Star Trek has approached things like trauma and things like fear, Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard. They've had a lot of great things to say about all that stuff. I think I was in the 5th grade, and the nickname Klingon Boy caught on. A lot of my classmates knew that I liked Star Trek because I wasn't shy about it. Why be shy? And they would call me Klingon Boy, which as an insult doesn't make a lot of sense, but when anybody is teasing you and if they're saying it in a certain way, it can impact for sure. And so I definitely remember, a few recesses and tears, feeling like I didn't belong or that nobody wanted me or nobody liked me and stuff like that.
Couldn't they tell you're Bajoran, not Klingon?
They couldn't see the tips of my ears to see that I'm Vulcan.
You're Vulcan. Oh, I would have guessed Bajoran.
But also when I was a kid, Meg, you asked the question, so I'm going to get personal. When I was a kid, I had a few bullies who, in particular, who appreciated my non-athleticism and would show their appreciation by practicing the latest wrestling moves on me, and would throw me down on the sidewalk or headlock me into the gravel in the playground and stuff like that. And one of the, I guess, staples of Star Trek is being able to talk your way out of a conflict. And so I couldn't fight my way out of those conflicts, I discovered. So I learned how to talk my way out of those conflicts, and learned how to solve my problems with words and defend myself with words in a lot of ways. So was my fandom a source of trauma? I don't think so, because I don't think that I can reasonably take responsibility for other people's choices, even children. But was it identity formative? Absolutely. Did I use it as something to help me feel like I belonged? Absolutely. And these days, am I willing to love it despite its flaws and yet still critique those flaws? Absolutely. You want to talk about toxic fandom sometime? Let me know, Meg.
It makes me so sad that that Trek fandom has gotten so divisive.
I find it ironic, the number of people who think that, or who profess to think that, it's been taken over by social justice warriors and the liberal agenda, and this is a very American perspective. And I'm like, did you watch the show? Like, ever? Like, it's always been that kind of progressive slant, or at least it's tried to be.
I think this is very much goes with the Douglas Adams theory of technology. That also applies to, I think, social progress. Is anything that existed before you were born is right, good, and natural in the way the things are. Everything between birth and 35, especially when you're a teenager, is shiny and new and the most important, greatest thing ever. Anything that comes after you're 35 is against the natural order of things.
Well, I'm 32, so I look forward to grinding to a halt.
I'm 41, and I am going to make sure that that if my brain defaults to that I work against it. But it is a bit of I think, as you get older, you do have to work a little harder at trying to understand things that seem to be changing faster than you're used to. But to my mind, it's always worth it, and that is one of the things that I learned from Star Trek, is that trying to understand other points of view is always worth it. I very much looked up to Mr. Spock. Even though Bones is my favorite of the thruple, as I call them. Because I love his snarky energy. And like he always manages to, get out of sort of diffuse tension with humor, even when it's inappropriate, because we should not be commenting on other people's ears. But yeah, I was, I've always been fat. I'm a fat kid who grew up to be a fat adult. So, learn to diffuse tension with humor, like most of us. And Star Trek, I think, helped me. I mean, my identity is utter chaos, and I'm okay with that. There are so many aspects to my identity that I'm bi and biracial and ADHD, and I can't make my mind up about anything. So yeah, my identity is chaos. I'm just a cloud. But Star Trek is part of my identity, part of being, how to be in this world. I ironically just wrote a video called "Why I Love Star Trek," which I hope to have out soon. I'm talking about like you, the memories that I have of sharing Star Trek with people, and that feeds into sharing other sci-fi with people. Like we have our community around Buffy, like we did in my house. There weren't a lot of things that I had in common with my family. I was kind of the black sheep. But one of the things that we did was actually my brother, sister, and I used to watch Quantum Leap together.
Excellent.
Which is how I got my interest in costume design.
That makes so much sense.
Because it's just like, I was, it was like, 11 or 12 when I was watching it. And I was like, they make a new world every time. Mm-hmm. And so much of it is the costumes and set. So that's how I got into, period costumes and just loving costume, was Quantum Leap. And, and I, one of my favorite memories, in my early 20s, was, my roommate and I used to watch sci-fi together. We used to watch the Space Channel, which was a channel we had in Canada. And particularly we used to watch Babylon 5 together. And Star Trek, and we were very different politically. He was a utilitarian, and I was a budding socialist, and and also 20. And how everything seems much simpler when you're 20. So we would have all these. We would watch this extremely political sci-fi channel, and then we would talk about politics and disagree but still be friends, which was a lot easier to do then. I mean, I lost touch with that friend because he became a conspiracy theory nut. So
that'll happen.
That is kind of how the last 2 decades. So that's why I say it makes me sad that that the Trek fandom and that so many other of our sci-fi fandoms have gotten so split, is, I think, to me, one of the best things about Star Trek, is that it's always about people from different walks of life and different opinions bringing the best of themselves to the collective, and not in a we must all be the same Borg kind of collective, but in a we can all work together and our different strengths be, and different worldviews just make, with infinite diversity and infinite combination, we are better together. Mm-hmm. And it makes me sad that we've sort of broken down so many of our lines of communication. Not that I want to communicate with the actual haters, the anti-fans who like are enjoying tearing it down, but the people who it just isn't for them, and we still, because communication has gotten so bad, we still can't sort of seem to just be like, meh, okay, Enterprise wasn't for me, and move on and still have, conversations. And that we don't seem to be able to do that anymore. And part of that is the anti-fans, the bad faith brigade. But there's more to it than that, I think. But hopefully, we'll get more media savvy, get better with social media or something, and learn to have better communication, and we can come back together in time, perhaps. So, yeah, that's a good question, Meg.
Yeah, way to go, Meg. You guys talking about our childhoods.
Let's see if there was any other questions. She asked, "Do you think science fiction has changed your worldview or understanding?" And I think we covered that.
Well, I was realizing there was another half of her question that I didn't really hit, and I think that was it. Yes, is the short answer. Because also one of the values that my dad tried to use Star Trek to instill in me was that sense of inclusion and of up through the 90s. I believe Star Trek was very tolerance focused when it came to diversity, in terms of like, you be over there and I'll be over here and we'll do our things. And you can do you and I can do me, and that's totally fine. And there's a more contemporary theory of inclusion that says that there's a step beyond tolerance, and it's acceptance. And there's even a couple more steps past acceptance. Accomplishship is a new one that I've heard, which is past allyship. And I think that if allyship is standing shoulder to shoulder with somebody, then accomplishship is linking arms. But the notion that, everybody deserves an opportunity to not only be themselves but find themselves definitely came about in a lot of my formative Trek years. And that's something that I've really appreciated and really carried forward. So yeah, it definitely has. Maybe it didn't change my worldview, but it helped me to find my own worldview. That might be a better way of saying it. And
what about the rest of sci-fi that you've enjoyed? Is that added to your worldview?
It absolutely has. Other sci-fi that I enjoy. One of my favorites. It's a very classic. It's 2001: A Space Odyssey. Both the book and the movie. Arthur C. Clarke writes in pictures, and he's a very good writer. Just the notion that we've barely scratched the surface of our own potential, and that every time we think we've hit the pinnacle, there's a giant, like, trap door or maybe attic door waiting to be flung open to an entirely different level of opportunity. I feel like I'm much more of a DC than a Marvel fan. And in terms of what I'm most familiar with and what I consume much more often, but just a lot of like never giving up, even when it seems like all hope is lost. That's very helpful too. And you and I are talking about this, Sara. I always try to find something that I can love in everything that I consume. All media that I consume, and that means a lot of times like trying to figure out what the message is behind whatever it is that I'm watching. Thank you, Ian Martin. I can't turn that off now. And so yeah, pretty much anything that I consume has the opportunity to affect my worldview or to help me change my own worldview.
Yep.
What about you?
Oh, gee. Well, I mean, I already talked about how what Quantum Leap brought to me. Just, wow, costumes. And I was trying to separate my worldview as a person from my worldview as a critic, and which is like sort of, I'm becoming a critic, but I think maybe I always have been. So it's like, I have my political worldview and like the professional like film studies person, and I'm like, but this taught me all about plot, and this taught me all about character development. I mean, I'll tell you a story about why I've always been a critic. Okay. When I was in summer camp as a little kid, and it was this, I don't know why my uber atheist parents sent me to this Christian camp, but I guess they didn't really have a lot of other options.
Welcome to Western Hemisphere.
This is true. But there was like a theater activity, and we were encouraged to like critique each other's skits, to give like constructive feedback. And I did because they asked for it, and I got told to shut up, that I was being too critical. It's like, be critical. No, shut up. You're being too critical. And I just remember being like, oh God, I can't talk. It took me a long time before I was like okay with, being able to criticize stuff without being like, this is not personal. This is just the thing, and please don't be offended. But this could have been better. That was me as like a 10-year-old being like, but what's the character's motivation? So. I've always been a critic. In that, never try to tear things down. Just, find ways things can be better, or things we can learn from why things went wrong. Babylon 5 taught me a lot about politics. And
Star Wars taught me about politics.
Star Wars, a lot about, Star Wars has never been a big, huge one for me.
I enjoy it. I definitely prefer Star Trek, but I don't dislike Star Wars.
I don't dislike it. It's one of those, not for me. The prequels were deeply disappointing.
Revenge of the Sith got a lot better in 2016.
Yeah. I saw the first two prequels in the theater, and had that, this is going to be exciting. I've seen porn with better dialogue.
I'm not sure if it's a knock on George Lucas or a high compliment for the porn you've been watching.
But I hate sand. It's coarse, and it gets everywhere.
Okay, first of all, I do hate sand because it is coarse and it does get everywhere. and fucking George Lucas has forever ruined those of us who hate sand for the world.
I'm not a fan of sand. I'm not going to write a scene about not liking sand.
I might. I love the beach except for the sand.
The Force Awakens was very much A New Hope, but I liked Finn and Rey better than I liked the, Luke Skywalker, for sure. I found him very boring in the original films.
But I was supposed to go to Tashi Station to pick up power converters.
Yeah, he was just...
Mark Hamill.
He played the character very well, but he was playing my little brother, and I was, the biggest fan of my little brother. Sorry, Ramsey. I am a big fan of my little brother now.
No, I feel no older sister is a big fan of their little brother at a certain point.
Yeah.
Not being an older sister myself, I can't speak to that specifically, but It's the impression I've gotten. What other questions do we have?
That's it for our questions.
Really?
I think, yeah.
All right.
They're very good questions, though, I think.
Very good questions. Boris, Meg, kudos, thank you.
Yeah. I'm sure if we do this again, we'll get more questions. Maybe we,
Well, especially when they see how little provocation it takes to get us to wax philosophic.
Well, yes, this is true. I wonder, should we tell them how, for anybody who doesn't know, how we met? Did we talk about that in the opening episode? I can't remember.
We the three of us kind of briefly brushed over the passion of the nerd community as kind of being the source of our origin story.
That we've just talked about how what sci-fi meant to us. We should talk about what nerd communities have meant to us.
Absolutely, let's do it.
Well, I got to start with that.
Okay, there you go. For all the audio participants.
For all the audio participants, I just threw up the nerd fighter salute.
Yeah, there you go.
Because that's one of my earlier online nerd communities, which I know Josh also belongs to.
I belong to a subset of the online nerd fighters community. So I guess without doxing myself, I work at a American university here in Texas, and I advise a student organization that is affiliated with or a spinoff of the Nerd Fighters. And that came about because I have a bunch of Trek memorabilia up in my office, and the students were looking for a new advisor. And one of my students was like, "Hey, my boss is a big old nerd." And so they came into my office one day with an offer that I couldn't refuse. And that was 5 years ago. And I've been advising that organization ever since. And that organization has a very dear place in my heart. Those students are monumental, phenomenal humans, and they are the example that I point to when I say that the younger generation is going to be not only fine, but probably the ones that save the world. And then from there, kind of concurrently, I was watching Passion of the Nerd videos on YouTube, run by Ian Martin, and was like, damn, this guy's got some shit to say, and he's saying it so well. My stars. And there was an editing live stream that Ian used to do. He used to live stream on YouTube whenever he was editing a video. And I hopped in and just watched this man manipulate Adobe. What does he use? Premiere? Adobe Premiere?
Yeah, same as I use.
Yeah, watch this man manipulate Adobe Premiere live on YouTube, and I was just riveted. And chatting in the chat with some people, and I got into a Star Trek debate with somebody, and somebody thought that they could school me on Star Trek, and so I corrected their assumption. And I remember one time, because Ian would pay attention to the chat when he was editing his videos, and I remember one time I threw out a suggestion about something, and he looked over and he was like, "Oh, thanks, Jackless." And I'm like, just that's simple line, and I'm in my living room, and I'm like, "Oh my god, the Passion of the Nerd talked to me! Oh my god!" And when I found out that there was a thing called Patreon and a way to become more involved with that community, I signed up and started participating in the live hangouts that he hosts, and that's been my very recent, especially for as deep and as long as I've been a nerd, that's been my very recent introduction into a nerd community. For sure. And the Passion of the Nerd is still definitely, I would say, my primary nerd community. And that's how I met Sara.
Yes. He came to one of our Patreon discussions where a bunch of us talk about an episode, and I was like, "Ooh, who is this smart man?" And also, until that point, I was pretty much the only person who's not totally white. Even though
I'm here for you.
Even though we're both quite fair skinned, but we're not entirely Caucasian.
Yes, I'm white passing for sure. My mother is Mexican American, and my dad is quite white.
I say I'm fair skinned Egyptian. My mother is also white, but yeah, I'm fair complexion but Middle Eastern. And yeah, so it was like, hey, someone else is
representation.
Diversity.
I'm here for it, man.
So yeah, because it's always good when you're not just the only one. And yes, Josh and I started, and then you and I when the pandemic started, I was trying to organize Buffy watches on Cast at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one I suggested, hey, let's watch some Star Trek, and nobody else showed up. And you will hear this story in my Why I Love Trek video, but yeah, Josh turned up, and because it was just the two of us, we turned on our mics and watched Star Trek 4 together. And giggles.
Which is such a fun movie to watch with somebody. Like, it's such a good icebreaker of a movie.
Oh yes. Our friend Charlie is on her first Star Trek watch through, and hasn't gotten to that point yet. So we're not going to talk about what Star Trek 4 actually contains. But everybody because she listens to this podcast. But so shout out to Charlie. But everybody who has seen Star Trek 4 knows exactly what we're talking about and just how much fun that movie is to watch with someone.
They know exactly what there be.
Oh yes. and all about the colorful euphemisms.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't think you can giggle your face off about that movie with someone in a pandemic and not become friends by the end of that.
And then Sara's been badgering me to watch Farscape for quite some time, and finally came up with this elaborate trap. She created a whole ass podcast
just to make my friends watch it.
that's why we're here.
Well, my history with nerdy communities. Do we count goths as nerdy? Yeah, basically we're nerds in makeup. So I was a goth in high school. I'm nerd in makeup. Yes, I'm still nerd in makeup. And that was because I've always been the I've never belonged unless I make a community with other people who don't belong, which I think is the definition of nerd community. So I had that with the goth community in school and just after. And then when I moved to Scotland, I had that with the burlesque community, which is lovely there. And then when I moved back to Canada and was starting to do stuff online more, I found I was missing the BBC, so I was watching a lot of YouTube because I really like edutainment, and I found the Crash Course, and it was like, oh my god! And I immediately had a crush on John Green of the Green Brothers, and that was how I found my way to the Vlogbrothers, which is the community that grew out of the Vlogbrothers video is what we call Nerdfighteria. Which is it's just kind of a community of well-meaning nerds. And I went to VidCon in 2016 and was immediately welcomed by some lovely nerd fighters there, some of whom I'm still friends with and still connected with, and it was a wonderful experience. Dancing that night at the concert was one of the best experiences of my life. Yeah, just dancing together. It was the first time I'd been to a concert other than like classical music since a horrible traumatic experience of a mosh pit going wrong when in my early 20s. So I was anxious, but it's one of those times when you push through the anxiety and it turns out to be worth it. And then I am currently looking at my framed program from NerdCon Nerdfighteria in 2017, which is the 10-year anniversary of Nerd Fighters, and was the only reason I would go to the States under the presidency of that man. Because I had actually bought the ticket in the hope that he would lose. But that was a wonderful weekend in Boston. Absolutely wonderful. And I actually ended up in John's video of that weekend. Because I ended up dancing right by where he and a bunch of the other people were, but I didn't say hi because it seemed rude. Yeah. And I am angry that J.K. Rowling's behavior has somewhat tarnished the memory of that weekend, because one of my favorite memories is all of us singing along to Harry and the Potters, to The Weapon We Have Is Love. Oh God, the thing I miss most, I think, is singing with people. You know, the thing that about gathering with people.
I remember gatherings, yes.
Yes. Do you remember singing with people?
Sara, when it comes to me and singing, you'll find that I can sing, but just not on key or well. Or
that doesn't matter when you're singing with people.
Appealingly. You'd be surprised. I've been given reason to believe that it does.
But yeah.
There's a stairwell in my office building that has amazing acoustics that I occasionally make use of.
I love singing. I'm not particularly good at it. I'm not terrible. I've had lessons, but I'm not but I enjoy it. And to me, there's one of the best things about being human is singing with people. And so that was that community. And then I was involved in the buffering community as well for a time. The Buffering the Vampire Slayer. And that's how I found my way to Ian's videos. And yes, just that, I didn't know YouTube videos could do that.
Yeah.
And then watching a live stream and being like, wait, the guy who does this is just a giant goofball? How is that? And who is this crazy long-haired redheaded guy with a beard that he's doing live streams with?
Oh, Jack.
I started hanging out in the live streams because I was studying digital production, so I was learning how to do editing. So it was great to be able to learn from Ian and flirt with him shamelessly. Which I did because it's funny, mostly. It was always a bit of a joke between us. And then I started going to the Hangouts. And I became friends with Ian and with Jack. And it's very odd, the experience of a parasocial relationship turning into an actual friendship. But with Jack and Ian, it definitely has, especially with our darling Jack.
Yeah,
I love my Jack.
The number of people, especially Jack, the number of people that I've made friends with and I've never seen in person or larger than about 3.5 inches in height. It's a fascinating modern age in which we live, isn't it?
It is. I just wish we could hug each other, and most especially I wish we could give Jack a hug.
I'm a big fan of hugs, and Jack and I have declared that if ever there is an opportunity for me to go to Australia or for him to come to Texas, the first order of business will be a long hug.
I shall be vaccinated the day after we film this video.
Nice. I'm getting my first dose today.
Yay!
Yeah.
We hope that all of you out there are getting your jabs, if you can, when you can. Because, there's lots of other people like our Jacks who are chronically ill and need protecting. So if nothing else makes you go get jabbed to protect our Jack. And that leads into, we have a outtake here for you guys,
yes,
that I promised when we had a fascinating discussion about gazes and objectification and where we stand on talking about pretty people, which started out because I complimented John Crichton's ass. So.
Which is an entirely reasonable icebreaker for this conversation. And I mean, we've like Richard Manning said, we've gotten Zahn's butt, and this podcast is called Muppets, Sex, and Trauma. And so us having an opportunity to sort of normalize our language use for those of y'all who are participating with us, I think was really beneficial. I'm really glad that you steered us in that direction.
Yeah, I think at some point we should have a conversation about the way that we talk about trauma as well.
And absolutely, we need to have an in-depth conversation about how we talk about Muppets too. Like, we need to really look for the core of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, enjoy.
Yeah. Well, we were going to have a bit of a conversation about, because, this is a sexy show. Maybe we should have a bit of a conversation about the way that we talk about sexy people.
Yeah.
How do we talk about sexy people?
I mean, because I think we want to make sure we don't objectify people. And perhaps my comment about his fine ass is a bit of an objectifying, for which I apologize.
But it's kind of like, where is the line though? That's my thing. It's like, because what if he does have a fine ass? Like,
I'm sure he has a fine ass. He does have a fine ass. I agree with that. For me, it's there's a difference in your comment, Sara, and then, because I think that it is, and this definitely predates it a little bit, but there is currently a bit of a cultural movement, I guess, in media to turn the gaze from male to female. And a lot of there's a lot of, I guess, negative criticism out there on the internet of like, well, why is it okay for Magic Mike to exist, but I'm not allowed to appreciate a fine set of tits and stuff like that? And it's because patriarchy is the short answer, but like, men have been appreciating a fine set of tits, I'll just quote myself, for hundreds of years, for thousands of years, and they've been doing it far longer than women have been consenting to allow men to do it. Whereas, in media, men are not nearly as often sexualized as women, and they are not nearly as often deliberately sexualized either, in the same way that women are in media. So, you like Ben Browder's ass? It's a nice ass.
Also,
there's a power differential in play, I think.
Right. And objectification, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm clearly not an expert on the matter, but isn't an element of it where you remove someone's humanity from the equation? And so I think there is a way of appreciating someone's beauty, their fine ass or their nice boobs, whatever, but still acknowledge that they are a living, breathing human being with their own feelings and thoughts and lives and all of those things.
It's in all honesty, it's a personal thing I've been working on, is not objectifying women. And for me, I came up with a formula.
Okay.
Objectification equals reduction times appropriation.
Okay.
So I can reduce a woman to her sexual characteristics, and then I can take those characteristics for myself. That's objectification.
Okay.
And then the antithesis of that, the opposite of that, for me has been like exactly what you said, Jack, keeping somebody as a whole person.
Yeah.
So we're sexual beings, we're
Yeah.
built that way, and
Yeah,
acknowledging.
and it's not about
Yeah.
turning away from that or pretending it doesn't exist. Of course it does. It's there.
It's
Again,
about
not all humans are sexual beings. Asexuals
Well, yeah.
exist and are valid.
Yeah.
fair enough. Those, I am a sexual being. I am sexually attracted to women, and my sexuality is something that is healthy and something that can be, celebrated, and that allows me to appreciate someone else's beauty, as long as in my head I keep them as a whole person.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
You know, so it's saying
Absolutely
that
agree.
saying that somebody saying that Zahn does look real good
And I agree.
has to go part and parcel for me, and also talking about her performance and
Yeah.
her characterization and stuff. If
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
only
yeah.
going to be talking about if I'm only going to be talking about a woman's sexual characteristics, I'm missing the mark.
100% agree. Yeah, totally. Just don't forget. Like it's okay as long as you don't forget that. Yeah, they're a person too, and you don't reduce them to a set of organs. Because they're a human being. I mean, revolutionary thinking. Am I right? Whoa.
This is where I flex and say I've read Laura Mulvey's Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. I did a whole video about discussing Seven of Nine's costuming and stuff. So the male gaze, a big part of it is not just that it's a man looking at a woman. The point of objectification is like there's a subject and an object, and so subject is a human, and an object is not.
Yes.
So you dehumanize and turn into an object, into a set of tits or a fine ass, and not a person who has
Who possesses those things?
Who has done clearly done a lot of squats.
We have to remember the squats.
Yes, always remember the squats.
And I think it has to be more complicated than just it's okay if women do it because we've been objectified, because I don't think that trying to balance the scales is necessarily.
There is an imbalance there. Sorry I cut you off there, Sara, but yeah, there's like an imbalance. It's not very equal, is it?
Yeah, and I don't think that trying to equalize it by being like it's okay if women objectify men because women have been objectified, I think that's a bit because it's not as simple as the binary. I mean, nothing ever is as simple as a binary.
Yeah.
But I think if you remember that there's a person, and in fiction, I think the person is the character. The person isn't Ben Browder. Ben Browder is a person, but the person I'm admiring is John.
Yeah, John Crichton.
Who is charming and fun and adorable, and who Ben Browder has created. Part of which is the physical thing, and I'm bi, so I also very much appreciate Zahn's beauty and Aaron's. And Dargo's. Although I don't actually find Anthony Simcoe attractive, but
that's great. I love that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's the voice.
Oh yeah, that's a sexy voice. It's like I think in episode 1 we made comparisons to Worf. He kind of sounds like Worf too. He's got that strong warrior leader.
I've always had a Worf thing.
Actually, I looked him up last night, Anthony Simcoe, and he's Australian. I didn't realize that he was Australian too.
Honey, everyone who isn't Ben Browder is Australian.
Everybody. I should just assume everybody, because even Lisa Hensley, Matala, her accent was bleeding through a lot. She was trying to not do it, but it was bleeding through a lot. Like, I'm sure she is Australian, even though I didn't look her up.
The other recurring non-Australian is Ben Browder's wife, who will appear in a lot of different sets of makeup. I'll let you know when Francesca Bueller appears, because she will be... You'll get used to her voice, because she has a lot of fun getting into various different characters.
Okay, cool.
And she's English. Basically, everyone else is Australian. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I think, like, appreciating the people, and also what I'm very careful of is I never am like, I have thoughts. Like when I talk about a beautiful person, I tend to just sort of say they are a beautiful person and not talk about any of their effect on me.
Right, because it's not about you, it's about them.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I find it a bit creepy when people make when people comment about me and make it about them, I find it weird.
Okay, that's fair.
And I would also, like, I would be extremely careful what I said to someone. I don't know. But I think, like, there is room for appreciating that beautiful people are beautiful people. Mm. And everybody has attractive things to somebody.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I mean, if I ever start finding Rigel attractive, then there's something very, very wrong.
Well, he's got
if the internet has taught me anything, it's that, of course, there is at least one person out there who wants to bang Rigel. I guarantee it. It's not me. It's not me. I mean, I'm open to the idea that I might change, maybe, but for the time being, I don't want to bone Rigel.
Sorry, can I? Yeah. I'm sorry. Can I share with you something that I do and that I say a lot? That kind of runs counter to what you just said. And I want to do it because I want to make sure that you don't misconstrue my meaning as we continue in these conversations. I actively avoid saying that someone is beautiful, or saying that someone is attractive, and instead I say, I find them beautiful, I find them attractive, I am attracted to them, because, and again, this is personal work that I'm doing with myself, because I'm trying to make sure that I maintain responsibility for my feelings, and that I don't place the responsibility for me being attracted to somebody on the person to whom I'm attracted. So I actually maintain that subjective language, but I just want you to know that that's why I do that, and I don't mean to diminish someone else's beauty or someone else's attractiveness.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that kind of subjective language is good. I mean, when people are like, I want to do blah, blah, blah. Like, no. Those thoughts stay inside your head or with very close people. As opposed to, I find attractive. I see someone as beautiful.
Okay. Or
this person is beautiful. I think, or this person clearly does a lot of squats.
That I'll put on them. They did the squats. I didn't do the squats.
I think there's, it's always complicated as to where the line is. So the line is always blurry. And I think, and of course it's different when we're talking about fictional characters than when we're talking about the person at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that there's a consideration too of, like, it's a fictional character whose beauty we can appreciate, but there's also an actor who was placed into that costume by someone else. You know?
Right.
which you're always keen to. I mean, there's the crux of your 7 of 9 video, which I love. Check out the costume Codex if you haven't. Jerry Ryan did the best she could by being painted into an outfit, but it wasn't her choice to be painted into that outfit. You know.
Yeah,
So,
the comments I get on that, the comments that I get on that video are a trip.
I bet they're a trek.
A trip.
but yeah, like I appreciate that you're always keen to point that out.
But yeah, like for me, I don't know if I have any particular methods like you guys of how I express my interaction and whatnot. For me, it's just the thing that I focus on is as I said, just always keep in mind and don't lose sight of the fact that there is a human being that I am admiring and that I should always treat them as if they are a human being, which is, again, not a revolutionary idea. Like, I'm not saying this is, oh, look at me, I'm so great. This is the default, people. This is just what you should do. But yeah, it's just always, for me, it's just, there is a woman there, a human being who has her own feelings, her own thoughts, her own life, and I should treat her as such, regardless of my attraction.
Yeah, these things don't detach. So they're not a separate thing that you can talk about as a set.
Right, yeah.
For the audio listeners, can you clarify what the...
She's talking about her breasts, people. Her chesticles.
I thought that was fairly clear.
Hey, it's all right. I'm rocking a B cup too. I'm rocking a B cup as well. God, this devolved quickly.
This entire episode has taken us down a path, and it's all Matala's fault.
Yeah, it is. It started with Matala. It goes all the way back to Matala. That was an Angel reference, guys.
And hope you guys all enjoyed that outtake. And we will see you again with our boy next episode in 2 weeks' time. Hopefully, our next episode will be about a Farscape episode.
Imagine.
When we are back with our boy. But we didn't want to... especially given that, Exodus from Genesis is a good episode, and we didn't... Even if it was a bad episode, we'd try to avoid, Jack missing the discussion.
By the time we get there, I hope this will be a non sequitur, but get well soon, buddy.
Yeah. Or, the thing is, when it's a chronic condition, there isn't necessarily a well. So I have chronic stuff myself. I always try to go with, I hope you have less bad days. Because sometimes you have very bad days, and sometimes you have less bad days. And so we can all hope for, at the very least, less bad days. If that makes sense, that makes more sense to people who have experienced chronic pain and chronic... But, so anyway, we do want Jack to be feeling like himself again. Because himself is a pretty cool person to be.
Agreed.
And yourself is a pretty good person to be, Josh.
Well... I think so, but I don't really have a comparison.
It's been fun hanging out, answering questions, and
you are a good interviewer, Sara. I appreciate this.
Well, that's good. So from Josh and I, take care of yourself, poppets.
Sound like we're signing off of a news program. From all of us here at Puppet Sex and Trauma, be safe out there, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great evening.
Be like us and go get your vaccine.
Shot through the heart. So, everybody, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all.